Welcome to CrimePod Castle's Unsolved Mystery Series, episode 85, I think it is now.
85, that's right.
85, wow. Yeah, so today we're going to be looking into something that's really, um, I guess, more about confronting the darkness that can be just below the surface of what seems like ordinary life.
Yeah, right.
And we're going to be going to Ghaziabad, India,
Okay.
to revisit a case from 2011,
Right.
the double murder of Rajesh and Poonam Sharma.
This is a tough one, a real head scratcher. It's one of those cases that kind of reminds you that even with, the best technology and the best efforts, sometimes the answers just don't come.
Yeah, so let's set the scene a little bit. Ghaziabad, September 25th, 2011.
Okay.
Rajesh and Poonam Sharma, seemingly a very loving couple, well-respected in their community, are found murdered in their home.
Oh, wow.
Multiple stab wounds, signs of a struggle. The scene right away suggests a very brutal attack, like up close and personal.
And I think what's so striking about this is that it doesn't seem like some random act of violence.
Right.
The level of brutality here really points to something much more targeted, personal.
Yeah, and the fact that their teenage son was away at a friend's house that night adds another whole layer to this.
Oh, absolutely.
Not only is he dealing with this unimaginable trauma of losing both parents, but he's immediately in the spotlight of a murder investigation.
Yeah, thankfully his alibi checked out really quickly, but I mean, can you imagine just the weight of that grief and the pressure of being so closely tied to something so horrific?
It's just heartbreaking. So we have a seemingly happy couple, brutally murdered in their own home. No obvious suspects.
Yeah.
What were some of the first things investigators focused on?
Well, they started with the obvious, the crime scene,
Okay.
and right away a couple of things stood out. The first was there was no sign of forced entry,
Okay.
which suggests that the killer was most likely someone they knew, someone that they trusted enough to let into their home.
So that narrows the field, at least theoretically. What was the second thing?
The missing valuables, jewelry cache, gone. Initially, that led investigators to think robbery.
Right. But then things get a little murky.
How so?
Because if you look at the level of violence, the sheer number of stab wounds, it just doesn't fit the profile of a typical robbery. Most robbers, they want to get what they want and get out. You don't want a confrontation. You certainly don't want to leave witnesses. The brutality here, the number of stab wounds, it feels personal.
So maybe a robbery gone wrong?
Possibly.
The Sharmas maybe recognize the intruder, things escalate?
It's possible, but it's just one piece of a very complex puzzle. So investigators, they start looking into the Sharmas' lives, trying to uncover any hidden conflicts, secret grudges, enemies. They spoke to friends, family, business associates, even employees from Rajesh's electronics shop.
Did anything come up? Any whispers of a possible motive?
Surprisingly, no. Everyone they spoke to painted this picture of the Sharmas as a kind, well-liked couple. Nobody could recall any serious disputes, threats, or any indication that someone would want to harm them. So we've got a brutal double murder, no forced entry missing valuables, and no obvious suspects. What about forensic evidence? Did investigators find anything at the scene that could point them in the right direction?
They did, but it wasn't as straightforward as you might think. The crime scene was chaotic, clear sign of a struggle. But while they did collect fingerprints and DNA samples, some of the fingerprints couldn't be matched to anyone in the police database.
A dead end, at least for the time being. So where did investigators go from there? If there was no obvious motive, no clear suspect, how did they even begin to try to make sense of this?
Well, they started developing theories, each one trying to explain the seemingly unexplainable. And trust me, these theories, they take us down some unexpected and frankly pretty unsettling paths. The first theory, and maybe the most obvious one, is the botched robbery, right? You have the missing valuables, the chaotic crime scene, but you look closer, there are some things that don't really add up.
Like what doesn't add up?
The violence in a typical robbery. The goal is to be quick and quiet, in and out. You don't want to have a confrontation. You don't want witnesses. The brutality here, the number of stab wounds, it suggests something more than just someone grabbing some cash and jewelry.
You're saying it feels personal, like there's some anger or even hatred fueling this crime.
Right, exactly. And that brings us to our second theory, personal grudge. Maybe there was some conflict, some resentment that the investigators didn't find. It wouldn't be the first time a relationship had a dark side that nobody knew about.
But wouldn't someone have said something? A friend, a relative, a coworker? Someone must seen some tension, some sign of a conflict?
You would think so, right? But sometimes people have reasons to keep quiet. Fear, guilt. Maybe they're even involved somehow. Or maybe it was a private conflict so deep that no one ever saw it.
Chilling. But if there's no evidence of a personal grudge, then what?
This is where things get a little darker. What if this wasn't a crime of passion? What if it was planned out, premeditated, like someone wanted the Sharmas dead and they paid someone to do it?
A hired killer. That sounds like something out of a movie.
I know it does, but hired killings happen, and they happen for reasons we don't always understand. Money, power, revenge. They drive people to do terrible things, and it all happens in the shadows.
But wouldn't a professional hitman leave a trail? Some connection to whoever hired them?
Not always. The best ones are ghosts. They know how to cover their tracks, how to make a murder look like something else entirely. And if they're good, they just disappear.
That's scary. So even if the police suspected a hired killer, proving it would be next to impossible.
It'd be really tough. You'd need to follow the money, find hidden connections, rebuild the whole case, looking for anything that points to something bigger. It's possible, but it's a huge challenge.
Okay, so we've got the robbery gone wrong, maybe a secret grudge, and the possibility of a professional hit.
Yeah.
One more, and this one's the hardest one to really grasp. The theory of random violence.
Meaning?
Sometimes horrible things happen for no reason at all. People become victims just because they were in the wrong place at the wrong time. That's hard to accept. But statistically, isn't random violence the most common type of crime?
Sadly, yeah. As much as we want to find a reason, sometimes there just isn't one. It reminds us that the world can be a dangerous and unpredictable place.
So 4 theories, each one with its own set of questions and possibilities. What makes this case so strange is that there's nothing that definitively points to one or the other.
And that's what makes it fascinating and frustrating. It's a puzzle missing pieces, a story with no ending.
It really is a dead end, isn't it? You have all these paths, but which one leads to the truth?
Yeah, this is the kind of case that you keep going over the facts in your head, hoping for some tiny detail that everyone missed, that one clue that breaks it open.
And all the while, you have a family and an entire community trying to cope with this horrible thing, and they have no answers.
I think the lack of closure can be almost as bad as the crime itself. It's like they're stuck in this place of grief. They can't move on.
And for the son to lose both your parents like that, and then to have no answers, no justice, it's unimaginable.
Absolutely. It's a burden no one should have to bear. And even though time might help a little bit, the questions never really go away. And without answers, those questions can consume you.
So what happens in a case like this when there are no more leads, no more theories? Does the investigation just stop?
Not really. The case stays open. The investigators don't give up hope. Technology keeps getting better. There are new forensic tools all the time. There's always that chance that something new comes up, a new witness, a confession.
Like those cold cases you hear about, right? Solved after years or even decades because of new DNA evidence or someone finally coming forward.
Exactly, it happens.
So maybe someday there will be new information about this case, and the Sharma son will finally get the answers he deserves.
I hope so for his sake.
But even if the case stays unsolved, we can't forget Rajesh and Poonam Sharma. They weren't just names on a file. They were real people with families, with lives that were cut short.
That's right. And their story, even though it doesn't have an ending yet, it reminds us how fragile life can be, and that there are just these random acts of violence that can happen to anyone.
It also shows how important community is, right? When something this awful happens, it's the people around you who help you get through it.
Absolutely. You lean on each other for support and comfort, especially when there are so many questions and no answers.
It's a good reminder that even in the worst times, there's still hope, there's healing, and there's the strength we find in each other.
Yeah, well said.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the unsolved murder of Rajesh and Poonam Sharma. It's a case that still has investigators baffled, and it continues to haunt the community of Ghaziabad, India.
Yeah, it's a tough one. And even though we might never know exactly what happened, it's cases like this that remind us to be aware, look out for each other, and to always fight for justice no matter how hard it seems.
Well, if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to follow our podcast. We'll be back with more deep dives into some of the most interesting unsolved mysteries out there. Until then, stay safe and keep asking questions.